everybody. Welcome to the Isosessions of This Is My Bourbon podcast. I am your host, Perry. I am so thrilled to be welcoming back two very good friends of the show, some of our earliest guests on the podcast as well, which is crazy. Colin Cox and John Phelps from the Hop-Ons podcast are back in the saddle again.
Oh,
whatever
man.
proverbial saddle that is. Guys, welcome back. It's so good to see you all.
Thank you for having us. Colin was being nice, waiting for me to talk.
Perry, can I do a thing before we start? I have some apologies from our last appearance on your podcast. First, I want to apologize to Rick of House fame. I said a lot of disparaging comments about your real estate empire, so my apologies to Rick House. And this one is actually serious. I am so sorry for all of the awful things I said about wild turkey the last time I was on your podcast. And I can actually show you, I'm drinking 101 as we're recording.
Yay!
You do such wonderful things, people at Wild Turkey, whose names I don't know, but I really like your bourbon, and my apologies.
I think it's Mr. Turkey, right? Is that the family that owns?
It's Jimmy and Eddie Turkey of the Wild Turkey Distillery.
My apologies to the Turkey family for all of the disparaging comments that I made the last, because I think I said, I don't want to repeat what I said, but I may have, as I often do, mischaracterized something, so my apologies.
Honestly, it's okay because so many people have that association with Wild Turkey as being the shooting whiskey during college, and then they get scarred by it, and then all they want to do is just curl up in the fetal position and would rather drink anything else other than Wild Turkey at that point. But
it sounds like it sounds like you have some experience with what you're saying regarding the fetal position and Wild Turkey.
See, personally, I don't. But I know of many horror stories from folks who do.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't drink for a long time.
I think you told us.
I don't know if I've ever told you.
No, you actually, because I think John and I were surprised at how young you are, considering how, in all seriousness, considering your depth of knowledge of whiskey, I just assumed you leaned into, I don't know, a slow alcoholism for the better part of 15 years, but
it feels much more rapid during quarantine. I'll say that much. But
hey, didn't I drunk dial you a few weeks ago?
Yes, you did. This is a good story for
Colin,
the podcast.
did you really?
Oh,
yes, he really did.
I was listening to a podcast one night, and this was about 3 weeks ago, and they were reporting on, and I think in the subsequent 3 weeks, we've learned a little more about this study that suggested, I believe, that 2 million people in the United States would die from coronavirus. Now, again, a lot of additional context has maybe challenged that number, but I was listening to a few people that I really like talk about this, and as I was listening, I became increasingly anxious, so I just started drinking a lot, and then I called Perry at like 12:30, and he answered.
It was so late, and my phone started ringing, and Lucy looks at me and goes, "Who is it?" And I go, "It's Colin." And we both had this moment of like, oh, we should really answer the phone just in case something could possibly be going wrong.
I love that. That would be your emergency person, a person that lives fucking 8 hours away from us.
So I tried calling my podcast partner, Andrew, and he didn't answer because he was probably asleep. I assumed you were asleep, but for some reason I thought...
I would have been.
For some reason I thought, Perry's definitely awake right now. I can talk to him.
Well, but peek behind the scenes, I was about 10 to 15 minutes from being asleep.
Oh no, I'm
Way
so
to go,
sorry.
And like I was in bed and I was mentally preparing for sleep. And my phone rings. And Colin starts asking me questions about bourbon, and I was like, okay, I'm really awake now.
Colin, goodness gracious.
Yeah, I think I was drinking.
It was a welcome surprise.
I think I was drinking a a rye whiskey that night, and I had questions about it. It doesn't matter. I don't remember either. I just remember I called you. So.
This was at the beginning of quarantine when things were really starting to hit the fan, and we were all going, oh, this is getting a little bit more serious. But I got to ask you guys, because you don't talk about your all's personal lives too much on your show, Hop On's podcast. How have you all kind of been dealing with things? Have you been holding up as good as could be expected?
So long as my friends answer my 12:30 drunk dials, I'm not too bad.
Yeah, I mean, weirdly enough, I think, I still am working as of right now. I'm still working 2 jobs remotely. I have a part-time job where Colin is also employed. We work at the same institution. And so they have given part-time workers pay through maybe the end of this month. I'm not sure yet. They haven't really said, so that's good. My partner, she lost her job sadly, but she has been luckily was able to get unemployment, so she's doing fine. And she's finishing grad school, so she's been very busy with that. She's got 2 weeks left till she graduates, so it's a lot. And I'm in school too, so I've been doing that. I've been doing for quarantine. I'm just busy as fuck all the time, and man, I don't really like it that much. So that's where I'm at right now.
My situation is quite similar because I teach at the college level, so nothing has changed. Well, everything has changed, but it's not like we just ended the semester. If anything, and I say this fully aware that there are some people who would like nothing more than to have a job. I'm working more now than I did before because I had to move all of my classes online. I was not teaching an online class. Now, some of my colleagues were already teaching online classes, so they didn't have nearly as much heavy lifting, so to speak. Perry, the first 2 weeks after the college announced that we were moving online were 2 extremely stressful weeks for that reason. Plus, I have a 4-year-old, so my spouse is here. She's wonderful. We both do a lot of that work, but just imagine tending to a person in addition to all of these adjustments that I've had to make to and I think funnily enough, the hardest part, the work maybe wouldn't have felt so overwhelming if I had a sense of the schedule like I do now. I spent maybe the first 2 or 3 weeks just finding a schedule that actually worked for me because I couldn't wake up in the morning and work the way I was. I'm back to, John knows this, I worked at a video store in the early aughts. John, I'm basically back to that schedule where I'm awake until 2 or 3 in the morning. Because,
oh my God, are you serious?
John, yeah, I'm.
Who are you? Normally you're like in bed at 9:40.
Well,
wake up at 5 a.m.
That's why he's calling me at midnight 30.
Yeah, usually that's how I like to do things. But now I do far more work at night than before. So to answer your question, I've been extremely busy.
I've had to kind of force myself into a routine. It almost feels like, like kind of just make myself, and part of that also has to do with the fact that I'm working this customer service job from home, and I do have to be up before 8 a.m. so I can be fairly chipper and try to receive calls and let people know that it's going to be okay, and the world is not as on fire as it seems like it is. But yeah, I have to make sure that I go to bed, that I actually eat 3 good meals a day, that I take care of myself. I will say the personal hygiene has kind of gone by the wayside a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't shower today, and I'm just a big trash can right now.
Isn't that what it feels like, though?
Yeah,
you just
it's pretty rough.
Pigpen from the Peanuts.
Yeah,
I was about to say the listeners can't see this, but you have like a pigpen cloud around you.
I do, yeah. You're podcasting. It's gross. It's gross.
The reason nobody's coming to this,
myself actually, how bad I am right now.
But there is a sense of like at some point you're just like, Yeah, I'm resigned to this. I accept this.
Oh yeah, I woke up and immediately was like, I don't give a fuck about anything today. Let's just here's pants I've worn 6 days in a row. Throw those on.
I have never been more of a sweatpants man in my entire life.
Yeah, it's good
than
stuff.
I am at this moment, and I feel like I'm living my best life, but I just know.
But it's like every choice I make, I can justify it now because it's quarantine times. Like Melanie and I have watched like 30 episodes of 90 Day Fiancé in a row, and I'm like, that's just because it's quarantine times. It's just quarantine times.
I've been calling it quarantimes.
Yeah, quarantine.
I like that.
Quarantimes.
You can get away with whatever you want during quarantines. Watched a lot of wrestling. That's what I do mostly with my time. A whole lot of professional wrestling. That's where all my sort of power goes to.
Yeah,
right
your Twitter feed is definitely evident
it's
of
just
that
all
fact.
wrestling. Yeah, I have got my extremely feminist partner to be a fan of wrestling, so I'm doing it right now.
Well, speaking of watching a lot of stuff at the moment, full disclosure, and part of it is because you guys were moving into the most recent portion, rather, of Twin Peaks, is that's what you're doing for the Hop-Ons podcast now. Anybody who maybe didn't listen to the Arrested Development portion of your all show, and maybe they're more of a fan of like the Twin Peaks style of TV, hop on to that. Hop on. Look at me.
Hey,
but
trademark.
He said it. He said the title. He did it. Anyway, Colin and John have been reviewing and discussing Twin Peaks ad nauseum, which I have really, really enjoyed.
Oh, thank you.
I have enjoyed the heck out of it, and I don't know if I've expressed that to you in the way that I kind of did with Arrested Development back in the day, but the discussion behind Twin Peaks has reinvigorated my love for the show and gotten me hooked right back in. So far as I watched basically the entire series, including Fire Walk with Me, over 2 weeks.
Oh, wow. I recently watched Fire Walk
man, that's
with Me.
a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I recently watched it for the first time. We probably won't talk about it until May, but I watched it about 2 weeks ago. And that's... Hey, I had no idea Donna had such a provocative backstory.
What a weird addition to her characterization.
I know.
Is her story in Fire Walk with Me. John, have you gotten to watch it yet?
No, I have not. I've had the Criterion for like over a year, and I still have not watched it. So soon.
I don't want to spoil too much of what it does as a prequel. Sorry, Lucy just closed a door behind me for some reason.
It's a ghost.
Scared me.
Hey, John,
life.
you should say hi again like you did last time to a person who's not even in the room. Sorry, callbacks.
I do want to say really quickly that my love for David Lynch is quickly fleeting, as Colin and I will be talking after we record this. We're talking about Mulholland Drive tonight for our Patreon feed. And holy shit, boy, do I hate a movie real bad.
I know. I didn't respond. You sent me a text and I didn't respond to it. I'm curious to know why, because I think it's maybe the best thing he's ever made in his life.
No, that's false. 100% false. 100% false.
Well, I'm not. This is not a provocative statement. Most people think late David Lynch. This is one of the best. I'm confused because it's a film.
We'll have a long, great discussion about it.
Yeah, it's a noir film, which is part of what I don't understand, because I know how much you like film noir.
It's so bad, Colin. It's such a bad movie.
Oh, not even close, man.
And the only good scene is the scene that has nothing to do with the movie itself. At one point, I was so mad that I kept looking at the time to see how much time was left. I did that a lot. It's a rarity I do that in a movie that I am enjoying. So this should be a fun conversation you and I get to have later. Although I'm sure by the end of it, you'll have convinced me of something that I didn't know that I'll like it, because that's what you do. I've been watching a lot of bad movies for my film classes, and this was just like cherry on top for like the shittiest week of movies I've had to watch. So
I was thinking maybe the Silencio did it for you. The minute you heard someone say Silencio, you thought, no, we're done. I'm done with this. I just saw a person with blue hair say Silencio, and so I'm done. I know it has that kind of pretentious cachet to it. So
it's very pretentious, yeah. But you know, I've been watching pretentious movies, so again, I had to watch Kelly Reichardt. Do you know who that is, Colin, the filmmaker? She made this movie called River of Grass in '94, and it was like, it's like the worst movie I've ever seen. It's this indie garbage schlock stuff that I'm supposed to read a lot into, and I just don't care about it. And then in my other class, I'm like, oh, we have to watch a movie this week called Wendy and Lucy. Guess who directed that? Kelly Reichardt, the woman who directed River of Grass.
Sorry, it's just some of those descriptors don't really agree with one another. Indie schlock is not really a thing.
That's what it feels like. But, you know, because in the early 90s, you could make an indie film by putting people in a car and filming it, and they talked about what fucking ever you want to. And critics are like, that's good stuff.
Perry, I'm so really sorry. Good. We've just cannibalized your podcast, so...
Oh no,
anyway,
I love this because
Perry, I'm so sorry. Please continue with whatever you'd like.
Hey, have you seen Perry? Have you seen Tiger? Have you seen Tiger King? Have you watched it yet?
Oh, we could talk about that. Yeah.
Okay, I like first off that we went from talking about real, I feel like highbrow, produced cinema to like Tiger King, which is just redneck fodder.
As far as production goes, though, man, it's good fucking.
Oh no! Don't get me wrong. Tiger King is amazing. I love Tiger King to death.
Plus,
and
I would argue on the level of narrative, Tiger King is practically Shakespearean. So.
No, I agree with you. I do.
I love that.
I have issues with people who are saying that like Free Joe Exotic, because everybody in that show is a piece of garbage, especially Joe Exotic.
I mean, it's not like he did anything. What's the phrase here? Not wrong? He did plenty of wrong.
He did terrible things.
He did
Everybody
really
in that
awful
show
things.
did, except for like Saf and John Rinke. Those are the two people who are kind of okay.
Poor Saf.
Everybody else has just been, it's the worst. I can't believe, Colin, you watched it actually.
Oh, I really liked it. I guess the only thing I would say to maybe not modify what you said, but just add to it is sure, everyone is awful, but everyone with the exception of Joe Exotic, their motivations are quite clear as well. That's what I think is actually quite compelling about this person.
That's true. Yeah,
I don't know. I think you could argue that everyone except Joe Exotic had nefarious purposes, maybe from the beginning. But I think he's almost cast as this Macbeth figure who
the tragic character.
Yeah. I mean, there is a fall that he experiences. Plus, again, I'm just not really sure why he did any of what he did. But for everyone else, it's so clear and so transparent.
Yeah, it's weird. It's bizarre.
Well, and it kind of took me until that bonus episode that they put out to, I think, really fully understand Joe Exotic as a person. Right? And it's the old absolute power corrupts absolutely notion.
Yeah.
So you take somebody who might have had some underlying power struggle feelings or desire to be in control freak, whatever you want to call it, and then once you put them in the place where they're making 100% of the decisions 100% of the time, then it starts on this downward spiral towards madness, which is what we saw. And not just, I mean, sure, there were the seeds being planted throughout it as he was. Also, I love psychoanalyzing Joe Exotic. This is fantastic. But it started in little seeds. I mean, it started with, you saw how easy it was for him to own a tiger, this big powerful animal. Then you saw that there was somebody who was in opposition to what he was doing, and the fact that they really didn't have any power over how he was conducting himself. And it just, and as he starts introducing other people who kind of encourage him to act in the ways that he had been. And it just leads to this really verbose character, really over the top character. And Joe Exotic is just that. He feels like a character in a TV show, and in many ways he is.
When you say opposition, are you speaking about that woman in Florida? Is that right?
Carol Baskins.
Yeah,
yes.
Carol
but
Baskin.
I guess the thing is, right? She's not actually in opposition to him. They're both ostensibly doing the same thing. She just doesn't realize that
she makes it look better.
Yeah,
right, but she also presented, yeah, exactly. She presented herself as being a sanctuary as opposed to a zoo or a farm, or I can't remember exactly how Joe classified his
all of that
place
falls
of business.
apart. Yeah, but all of that falls apart when you realize that whatever it is she owns is privately owned, and the umbrella that catches all of them is the idea that people can privately own these animals, which that's what tethers them all together. And within it, and in that way, it almost feels like the way different religious denominations split from one another, right? It's we all basically believe the same thing, but we disagree on the particulars because they're all basically committing the same sin, which is we're exerting our private will over these animals that should not be private property. So
I feel like I was just witness to a mind-blowing moment that would have happened on the Hop-Ons podcast.
It happens a lot, man. It happens all the time.
I do love we're getting off on another tangent, but I do love listening to Colin explain a scene to you that you didn't like, John, and then converting you to being a believer. That's always one of my favorite parts.
I think that's like his favorite thing to do.
I don't. No, I don't know if I enjoy it. What I enjoy is just talking seriously about things. I think there's far too little of that, and taking something seriously. And John, there's something to be said about you actually championing this show, because I think I wanted to do something else, but all you talked about was how we have to do Twin Peaks. So I think
you wanted to do like 30 Rock maybe, or Parks and Rec.
It was
like the big push.
Bad decision. That would have been awful. I'm so glad we didn't do that. My
those
feelings
shows, both of those shows would have taken you all so long to get through.
Yeah, you're right. The next one's going to take a long time because we're doing 24. I'm doing that right now.
No, I'm not doing this. I've
already locked it in, so we're going to be talking about 24.
I'm not doing this until you read this.
It's going to be really, really good, man.
Until you read this book I want you to read about biopolitics and torture. I'm not doing 24, so...
And what did you want to call it? The Bauer Boys?
Oh, stop it. I think I mentioned this before. When I was in grad school, I created a 24 drinking game, which was one of my favorite things to do. So yeah, no, I do have a perverse affection for 24. It's just the schlockiest show, man. It's so silly. But Perry, returning to Twin Peaks, I know you've seen season 3. It's pretty unbelievable, right?
Oh, it's insane. It's insane. And like it's hard for me to talk about The Return without spoiling major moments in it. But whatever you think you're getting into with this season of television, you're wrong. I mean, just straight up, there are twists and turns in this show, and there are so many minute details that you have to watch multiple times. I mean, like, even still, I've probably watched The Return 4 or 5 times all the way through. And even still, I'm finding moments that now make more sense to me than they did on the 3rd and 4th rewatch. There is one episode in particular where the first time I watched it, I went, that is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Why would anybody make that? And you will know exactly which episode it is.
Seems to pretty much be a David Lynch thing. My assumption is it's got to be that episode 8's the episode everybody talks about.
That's the episode.
But it's the one that I know it involves the A-bomb. I know it involves a bunch of testing in the 40s. I know the basics of it, but that's the episode people say is like the high mark of the season. So to hear you say that makes me think I definitely will dislike that fucking episode.
It really is because you just don't know what's going on. And honestly, if you're looking at the return in a grander picture, you are left with more questions than you are answers.
I mean, weirdly enough, like hearing you say that doesn't. I mean, it's a fucking David Lynch. He's
absolutely.
He made a movie where he talks to a monkey for fucking 20 minutes, and Colin thinks it's the greatest.
It's so good
film that's come out since like Schindler's List, and What Did Jack Do are sort of the same.
Fuck Schindler's List, man. That's such a bad movie. But no, What Did Jack Do? That's cinematic gold, my friend. No, I listen. I some of this I'm posturing, of course, but I think my point about What Did Jack Do is David Lynch persuasively allowed me to empathize with a monkey, and I think that's I think that's the point. That's all I can tell you. So
I think like to say the phrase whatever you think it is going to be different when it comes to Lynch. You're right, because I have no idea what he's going to do ever. I would love to take this man's masterclass that he's offering right now on how to make films. Can you imagine?
Oh my gosh.
He would spend so long talking about like the buttons on the camera and what kind of food to have on set to make the actors feel certain ways. That's what he would do.
Now, what you want to do is every day you wake up and you look in the mirror and you say, self.
But what's bizarre is like he's so good at filming horror, and I wish he would make like a straight horror film so badly because he's so fucking good at it. I mean, in Mulholland Drive, which we'll talk about later, the scene in the diner is like one of the scariest fucking things I have ever seen. That guy is acted perfectly. The dialogue's really good. The camera work's really good, and he's good at filming that stuff. But then other times, I'm like, what have you been smoking or eating or drinking to sort of come up with these ideas, David Lynch?
Okay, so here's quickly what I'll say about Mulholland Drive. So if you accept the premise, and I think you should, that our lived reality is structured by fantasy, the whole film makes sense at that point, because all we're seeing until we return to that apartment with maybe 20 minutes left in the film, all we're seeing is Betty's fantasy at that point. That's all we're seeing. We're just seeing this elongated fantasy. And that's what the movie tries to understand, is why and to what degree is fantasy important as it relates to our lived experience.
So that is very interesting, because I feel like what?
No, John just made
I know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter. I have plenty of arguments that we'll talk about later.
Sure.
Because
no, that's fine.
But that feels like...
What happens if I do these emojis? Does that do stuff?
I honestly don't know.
Oh, I put a thumbs up above my face.
I didn't see that. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm using Skype's weird.
It's very strange. How do you get rid of it? Oh, it's gone now. Okay.
It should be gone.
Anyway,
sorry,
what were we talking? No, but that sounds really interesting, because it feels like that's in. Oh, there's the thumbs up. Okay.
No, I saw it.
There's the thumbs up. That was weird.
It just came up.
I feel like a grandpa trying to learn. Now, what's this do? What's the skip?
You're on your full.
What the skip do?
You're on your full-sized iPad.
You got to be like all the way leaned in. Can you guys? How you guys doing there?
No, Granddad, back up.
You got to back up.
We can't
I'll send you all the link to the SNL sketch where they do a group Skype meeting.
Yeah,
it's a Zoom.
It was so good.
Have you
So
seen that,
good.
Barry?
I
God
have,
bless this
yeah.
guy. Oh, that's weirdly enough, ETSU next week. They brought in 3 of the SNL people to do like Zoom like comedy specials for
Really?
ETSU students. So
Really?
Mikey Day and Keenan Thompson, and I can't remember the other person, are going to be doing like live shows for us. That's pretty cool.
And where we are, that's East Tennessee State University.
East Tennessee State,
Yeah.
go Bucks.
So, so you can. That means you can maybe send me a Zoom link so that I can sit in on that and not.
I'm not going to send you a Zoom link.
I'm
You
just.
have to have an ETSU email address first.
I'm just.
off, so you're out, Perry.
John. Oh my God. I'm just kidding.
I mean, I would send it to you. I don't care.
No. Anyway,
You should enroll.
People take enough of my
You should
money.
enroll online, Perry, for a
for
class. Just so
for
you
3
can-
days.
And then go, I'm out. I don't want to do this.
Look, I did 7 years of undergrad. I'm not doing a day more.
Understandable.
Dude, I will have 7 years under my belt when I'm done. Oh, my God. Oh, God. I don't know why I did this. I don't know why I listened to my gut and said, go back to school. You'll enjoy it. Because that was a big mistake. That one was.
you do enjoy it, okay? You
I
do-
enjoy aspects of it, sure.
Sure, but not sure. There are some aspects that are cumbersome, but you certainly enjoy this more than you enjoyed what you did before.
John, you
me-
hated what you were doing before.
Right?
No, you're right.
Thank
You're
you.
not wrong. I did.
Yeah.
I hated what I was doing, yeah. However, I will say this. There's a motorcycle going by.
I heard.
Thank you. As someone, Colin, I love you and I appreciate you as a friend. More than a friend, less than a wife, as they would say.
Concubine,
How do
I think,
you-
is
For
what
the
they
best
call that.
reasons possible, I'm sure.
How do you? Because like the people that are teaching my classes, my film classes, they're as old as I am. That's something that's an interesting thing when you're an older college student. But Colin, like, how do you make a film program, because you teach film also, that is not full of pretentious dog shit? That's something I'd like to ask you.
I would say the first thing you should do is read the work of Todd McGowan. He's a professor at the University of Vermont. I talk about him a lot. That's not to say he's written a whole book about David Lynch, so that's not to say that he can't do that, but a lot of the examples that he uses to make the points he makes, they're examples from popular films. They're not I don't know, some French Russian hybrid from 1965,
Oh, man.
but I guess like I think I see your point, because you and I have talked about this. I'm developing a syllabus for an intro film course, and I think the one thing I don't want to do is to create the impression that appreciating film means you need to like Jean-Luc Godard and only Jean-Luc Godard,
Sure.
right? I think part of it is there's this question of validation, I think, for a lot of people, that you don't need to do anything to validate Shakespeare, right? But I think for some people, they think you need to do something to validate a class that wants to study film or prestige television, even though you call it prestige television. I think a lot of it is just the assumptions we make about these different mediums. And film is still, and this might sound strange for people to hear, but film is still a relatively new medium. Film
Right.
is a 20th century creation. So, and when people think about films, they often think about blockbusters, especially people who were born and have lived after maybe 1970. And I think it's just fighting those kinds of impulses, but that's not to say that there aren't interesting things that happen in these smaller, more idiosyncratic areas and genres and movements. But I think, and you and I have talked about this before, I would save that for like a master's or a PhD class. And when you're just doing film in an undergraduate context, just talk about good movies, talk about how movies are made, talk about lighting, camera movement, sound, all of that. But yeah, leave all the pretension for later, and also put it in a proper context, because I think a lot of people don't do that. So
I think
Sorry.
it's
No, I agree with
I
you.
think it's unfair to have conversations in large groups about only the good things, though. Right? So if you're only watching movies that are on par with, say, The Godfather in a film class, you are really doing people a disservice by not showing them examples of what might make quote unquote bad film. Okay, so
I don't know. I mean, I think at that level, though, like, there's a way to teach a film class and still be objective about it. Like Colin was saying, like, you could teach a quote unquote bad film, but talk about like the camera movements or what the mise en scene is in a movie. I guess I see what you're saying, but also, like, if I had to pay money for someone to teach me about bad movies,
but there's something to be.
I don't know if
but I'm doing that right now with the classes I'm in.
But
right
there's
now.
something to be learned from other people's mistakes, right? I mean, people have come and gone and done what they've done, so that other people don't have to do what they did in terms of accidents or mistakes. I mean, and yeah, it's all very subjective, but I mean, and this might be a little bit off the mark because there was a movie that came out last year that was on par with its poor ilk. But do you really think that people are making movies like The Room now that are commanding such attention in terms of what not to do? And I mean, I would argue there's maybe one that came out last year, and that's The Fanatic with
No, I mean, there's one bigger than that came out last year.
Cats.
Yeah, I mean, like, when you want to talk about,
or
like,
do you mean Joker?
When you want to talk about like film flops, well, we could get into that. If you guys
we're
would
not
like
doing
to.
that tonight.
Yeah, the Cats is like quintessential. It cost $100 million to make. It made less than $20 million. That's a flop. The Fanatics is fucking Fred Durst directed that. Barry, you're gonna bring the Fanatic to the table from the lead singer of Limp Bizkit? Oh, wonder why that movie did so poorly.
Can I say one thing about The Room, though? Because as you were talking, Perry, I was actually thinking about The Room, because I think something else that if you wanted to teach bad movies, I think one way to do that is to maybe think about how film is such a self-referential medium, which is to say, like, Spielberg uses this shot because Coppola uses this shot because you could just go back and back and back and back. And so I think you could easily teach a movie like The Room, and you could talk about, well, what was he attempting to do? He was clearly trying to do something. This wasn't a movie that was produced out of a vacuum. I think if, for example, you watch that love sex scene, he's
I don't want to, but okay.
But in all seriousness, he's clearly pivoting from some of those sexy erotic thrillers from the early 90s and the late 80s, right? Like, he's trying to maybe appropriate some of those sensibilities. So you could talk about bad films in those contexts, but even movies that, I don't know, people don't like or don't have high IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes scores, that doesn't mean there aren't interesting technical things happening in those movies, and you can totally talk about those as well.
Sure, and I think that's what I'm kind of getting at, is there is room for conversation, not just around what people shouldn't be doing, but what can we learn from, what they might have done right. And to your point about film being a new medium, of course, I'm going to equate it back to bourbon. Well, whiskey culture is a relatively new thing in not just the United States, but in Europe and even parts of Australia and Japan especially. But, 50 years ago, people would have been very curious as to why we were having conversations around whiskey. But now there's podcasts about it. There's YouTube shows about it. There are books being written about it ad nauseum. There are talks on it and tastings, and people are being considered leaders in the industry, not just because of what they might be making, but the way that they're talking about it. Right. And for every good whiskey, quote unquote, good subjective whiskey, there might be 4 or 5, even 10 ones that are not as favorable. right? So I think that there is that's what I think I kind of equate it to the most is while there is subjectivity behind it, there is still room for growth and there is still room for conversation behind experiencing what might be not necessarily the most widely accepted or approved in the field, but just something that might be considered top tier. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's unfair to just have conversations or classes or some kind of discourse where you're only talking about the top shelf level of the individual medium. And I think film and bourbon, I don't need to say this, there are obvious differences, but I think one, considering what you were just saying, I think one way you can connect them when thinking about maybe producing commentary and criticism, which I think that's what bourbon podcasts try to do, at least your podcast, YouTube videos, et cetera, is, well, if you have a foundation strong enough, then you can identify what doesn't work, for example, about a film. And I think an interesting project would be, okay, so we've watched all of these really good movies. Now I want to show you a bad movie, and I'm assigning you a scene, and you need to talk about how you would fix that scene. And I think you can do the same thing because I've heard you do something similar with bourbon, right? Yeah,
it's like,
absolutely.
Well, this is what it tastes like, but I think it would be better if it did this or had this flavor profile to it.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I think that's a way of engaging, again, as you said, with something that's bad or something that could improve, and not just deferring to the best of the best, so to speak.
I had to watch Top Gun.
You said that, and you said how much you hated it.
So, John, what would you do to fix Top Gun?
Do what?
What would you do to fix Top Gun?
I would. Oh man!
Instead of just don't make the movie. Like, what's one thing that you think would make Top Gun an objectively better film?
We need to start a whole new podcast that's just called "This Is Me Fixing Top Gun," the podcast.
I mean, you'd have to get rid of all the toxic masculinity because it's so rampant and so embarrassing. The dialogue's bad. Any scene that's not in the air in a plane is horrendously bad.
But they played volleyball, John. Do you know how great that scene with them playing volleyball is?
It's so bad, and that's an example though, Perry, of a movie that is objectively not a good movie. IMDb scores, Rotten Tomatoes scores, all bad, but it made so much money. And in the context of when it came out, it's something you have to talk about. You have to talk about, the beginning of blockbusters, and that's sort of in that realm of those years. But it's a tremendously bad movie. But I understand why it made money.
And people still have so much affection for it too.
They do that. There's a second one coming out. Can't wait to get first in line, day one.
You've already bought the pre-screening tickets for.
Yeah. Day one. I can't wait. So
you see, I would almost teach Top Gun and Batman and Robin as examples of unintentional camp, because I think you could learn a lot about camp.
Oh, absolutely.
By watching. And I think Schumacher intended to do this.
It's intentional camp. Yeah, Batman and Robin.
But I don't think Top Gun is, which is part of what makes it so enjoyable to watch, is that it's such a great example of camp. But who directed Top Gun? Produced by Brockheimer, right?
Tony Scott,
I thought you were going to say Tony Stark, and I was like, "What do you?"
Tony Stark, early Tony Stark.
John Phelps has gone off the deep end in quarantine.
Tony Scott makes really good movies. He made Man on Fire with Denzel Washington, one of my favorite.
I really like that
films.
movie. Yeah,
but yeah, he's great, and he obviously knows how to make blockbusters. It made a bunch of money. I think I looked it up, and budget was less than $100 million, made close to half a billion dollars. So, I mean, he knew what he was doing. Yeah, obviously. But then we had to watch that. The only good thing about this class is tomorrow I get to watch Jurassic Park. So
yeah,
I'm pretty excited about that one. Yeah.
Well, have I told you my favorite line from Man on Fire?
Is it? What? No, please do.
It's he's about to kill someone near an overpass, and the guy says, "Please, please, one wish." And Denzel Washington says, "Wish, I wish you had more time," and then he shoots him. Yeah, I love that line. I don't know why.
So good.
Yeah.
Well,
it's a great line.
I just watched this week. I know this is my movie podcast, but I just watched 2 of what I think might have been the best movies I've ever seen in my entire life this week. Parasite and The Lighthouse.
Both very, very good movies, Perry.
I have not seen either.
I enjoyed them both immensely. The Lighthouse, probably my favorite movie of last year, apart from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Those are my 2 favorite films of last year, I think.
I was just blown away by both of those movies. And somewhat similar reasons, but also fairly different. I mean, structurally, narratively, they are quite different. I mean, there is still a twist in the both of them that you definitely weren't expecting, but at the same time, they are just shot and produced, and they're such starkly different movies.
Yeah,
but oh my gosh.
I mean, Parasite's like a comedy for the first 2/3, and then it takes like a super sharp turn into like socioeconomic horror there at the end, which is really good. The Lighthouse is basically like a good companion piece to The Lighthouse is The Shining. Yeah. Obviously, The Lighthouse is way funnier, and is Robert Eggers, the guy who made that, is so good at creating just a sense of atmosphere. He made The Witch, which is also an atmospheric, one of the scariest fucking things because of how atmospheric it is. I loved it, man. I like films like that. I love original ideas. Like both those movies were fantastic. Colin, have you seen Parasite?
Mm-mm.
And you haven't. I know you haven't seen The Lighthouse.
I haven't watched. I would like to, but I haven't watched either of those films. I've heard nothing but good things about them.
Parasite is streaming on the old Hulu right now.
Oh, really?
Have Hulu.
I do.
You could watch that.
I have Hulu.
So
you're all grown up.
Here's what I'll say about The Lighthouse. I liked it so much, I spent money on it twice. I rented it.
You could just buy it.
Well, that's the thing. Is like I was like, I have a really hard time committing to making purchases like that if I'm like unsure whether or not I'm going to love it. So I rented it. All right. I rented it, and then I got through it and I loved it so much. I was like, I have to own this. And so I bought the digital copy right after I had purchased a rental copy of it. I can't say enough good things about that movie, honestly. For it to be essentially 2 actors for an hour 45 minutes on old school film in a black and white setting.
Yeah, shot like not even 4:3, like old school silent film pan scan style. Like this, like the stamped square. It's really cool.
It just absolutely blew me away. Robert Pattinson is a phenomenal actor, and he feels so real. And that's and not that there isn't a realness to Willem Dafoe in that role, but if you look at them as foils, oh my gosh. I mean, you feel the slow dip into insanity that Robert Pattinson experiences throughout that movie, right alongside him.
Hey, speaking of insanity with Willem Dafoe, have either of you seen Lars von Trier's Antichrist?
I have not actually.
Why'd you have to bring up that sack of shit?
That's a tough movie, kids.
Of all people to bring up, you got to bring up the fucking worst. I hate this man. His movies are dog shit, Colin, and I'm sorry that you like Dogville. I know it's
I do like Dogville.
Movies that you enjoy. Antichrist is total garbage.
It's tough.
Melancholia made me want to literally die, so I guess he was doing his job in that one, showing how sad everything is.
I think Melancholia is interesting.
Melancholia is awful, Colin.
Nymphomaniac is not
an awful
very
movie.
Good. Yeah.
The man sympathized with Hitler, so that's who you're liking right now, just so we're clear.
Well, let's be clear about something. I appreciate his films. I don't necessarily know if I endorse
Perry, edit
his...
this to say I appreciate him.
And listen, don't edit this to make it sound like I said I killed Earl Milford.
Well, there you have it, folks.
There's a lot of horrible people in the world. I don't need to tell you about how precarious your fetishizing of Tom Cruise is. So,
Tom Cruise, I have gone on record saying the man is a complete sociopath. I get it. But he's an infinitely watchable person. He just is.
Okay.
Those are the facts.
Okay,
Colin.
Tom Cruise over his entire career or Billy Zane in Twin Peaks?
oh boy, that's a tough one, John. What do you think?
Oh man, that is so hard. That Billy Zane.
Are you going to hop from the Zane train to the Cruise?
The Cruise Cruise.
No, I get the Cruise. Those Mission Impossible movies, they're just, apart from number 2, which again, we've talked about this several times. Number 2 doesn't exist in the canon of my mind, but he's so good. I got to go. I'm Tom Cruise all the way.
Oh, I don't know.
That was a strange tangent.
That was very good. Yeah.
But I think that's a good quarantine thing. Watch all the Mission Impossible movies. Not number 2, it's really bad. It's
you know
so
what else
bad.
people...
He's got the long hair. There are doves everywhere. Remember, somebody shoots a missile and there are sunglasses in it. Do you remember this at the beginning of this movie?
Oh no, the sunglasses are the part of the message that self-destructs.
Yeah, but he gets the message because a helicopter finds him rock climbing and they shoot a missile at him.
Okay, here's the strange thing.
But me in that movie, I was like, "Fuck yeah, dude! I want those sunglasses."
Let's talk about this for a second. He's rock climbing completely alone. And he sees someone in a helicopter point at him and then shoot what appears to be a missile at him. And he just knows, those are sunglasses. That's a bit strange. Because I would think, oh no, that's a bomb.
There's not enough whiskey in this room to make me
It's not a missile with sweet fucking Oakleys in it, but that's what he gets.
Because that implies that it's happened on multiple occasions. Because if you watch the movie carefully, it cuts back to his face. And guys, I know you can't actually hear this, but he makes this face. He goes... like, oh no, here it goes again.
Oh, they caught me.
I just wanted a vacation, but they're gonna...
Those stinkers, the IMF.
They're gonna pull me back in. So, yeah. Which again, that implies that's happened on multiple occasions.
Turn to take from that, the turn that takes from that movie to fucking number 3 when Philip Seymour Hoffman all but like murders his wife, and that's a very strange turn of movies.
Yeah, it's
that one's great. Number 2, not so hot. Love John Woo, but no.
You know what else other people should do during quarantine is also listen to the Big Arms podcast.
I don't know if it's going to come back. I haven't had time. I just haven't had the time, man. I guess there's 2 weeks left in school, so maybe after that, and when all this other shit settles down, we'll bring back. Because I want to get Meggers in on it too, and that might be a little bit. So we'll see.
It barely started. There were 3 episodes.
Yeah, stop while you're ahead. You know. No, there will be more. I just haven't had the time to really think about it. School sucks, man.
I understand. Like I said, I was there for 7 years. So,
what's your first degree in?
Oh, my first and only degree is graphic design.
Let's back the train up a little bit here. You went to undergrad 7 years and got the one. Took a little while, huh? Yeah, that'll happen.
Yeah.
Hey, no shame. There's
no shame.
It took me like maybe 5 years to do an undergrad degree, so yeah.
It took me 4. It took me 4 on the first one, which I hate. I don't know why I fucking did it, and then this one will be 3. So
yeah, it took me the same amount of time to get an undergrad degree that it takes most people to become a doctor. So
I think you've said that to me before. Yeah,
I think I have as well.
But
yeah.
Listen,
so,
there's and Perry, but in all seriousness, I teach at a community college and I work with community college students. thinking that taking 7 years is a problem is only because we have this notion that you are to graduate in 4 years, and that's how we do it. Like,
yeah.
if you just acknowledge that that's some ideological injunction and that it's not speaking a kind of truth, then who cares? 7 years, 3 years, 5 years?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, who gives a fuck? Yeah, I don't care. I thought you had more than one, though. Because you're so smart, Perry. You're such a smart boy.
Stop. I didn't bring you on here to blow me up or anything.
Well,
I love you, John
All right,
Phelps.
fine, Perry. I can't believe how dumb you are.
I don't take compliments well. Like I get that really, and not that I'm not anxious anyway, but I get that really like anxiety filled, like, how do I respond to this kind of feeling? You know what I mean? And so
Do you think
I'm
it's
not trying to
because
be
you
mean,
don't
John.
deserve it or something?
I apologize. No. It's not that at all. It's just I do as I do, and that's it.
That was a very Popeye answer that you just did. I do as I do, and that's all that I do.
I did eat me spinach today, so actually it was kale, but
no. But don't you think we don't actually teach people how to accept compliments at all? We teach people about how to accept criticism. My God, there are whole books written about how to recover from and how to understand criticism. But how often do people talk about how to take a compliment? Because I think you're totally right. Like, how do you do that aside from saying, "Oh, thank you. I work extremely hard, and I'm so happy that someone acknowledged all the work I do." So yeah, and I'm just like you. I'm just an incoherent mess trying to seem less incoherent, and I'm glad that in the moment when I seemed that way, you saw it. So.
Absolutely. And I think there was
answer,
something,
Colin.
To get, meta or inside baseball or whatever. I mean, I think that's something that I latched onto so much when I first started listening to the Hop-Ons podcast, is I was like, these guys they feel like what I'm doing. I was very grassroots when I was starting the show, and then now it's becoming, very listener fueled and supported and everything. And I think that we're both very much in that same boat in terms of how we've grown with our individual shows. And so I've enjoyed getting to make podcast friends with you guys. Yeah. And I always I don't expect no's, right? Like, I don't expect a no when I reach out to people. I just expect a non-response. You know what I mean? Like, I always feel like there's just not going to be anything that happens or anything that comes from it. And so when I sent you guys a message for the first time, and I was like, hey, first off, big fan of the show, big fan of Arrested Development at the time, which is what you guys were reviewing and everything. And I was like, would you guys want to come on my podcast and talk bourbon and Arrested Development? And how quickly you both said yes. I mean, it was a very cool moment, I think. Like, I enjoyed kind of that immediate gratification of knowing that there's somebody who is willing to come into this space with me under certain pretenses, but ones that were accepting nonetheless. And I listen, of course, to Hop-Ons every episode that comes out, and stay very involved in what you guys do on social media and everything. And I just think that it's hard,
which is nothing. We do nothing on social media.
Well, not Hop-Ons necessarily, but when you guys are both on there tweeting about how much you hate the Joker or what's going on,
I really like the Joker though, which is strange. Yeah,
half of you don't care for it, but
he is making a face. Look at that face. Look at it. So
but I still feel very connected to you guys after however long it's been at this point. What did I say? A year and a half?
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah.
So
I mean, I was like genuinely flattered that you would even want to talk to us. Anytime someone mentions the show or talks about the show or talks to us on Twitter, it genuinely is one of the most flattering things.
I feel the same way. I really do.
I love it. I really do. It's like it makes my whole day when Colin will text me and say, "We got a new review," and I'm like, "Oh my god, this is the coolest fucking thing ever!" Except for the one. We all know the one, and we won't talk about that anymore. Other than that,
fine.
Though,
it was.
You know, we all would have forgotten about it if you didn't keep bringing it up, John.
That's exactly. See what I mean? Like this is the psychoanalytic principle
we
that by talking
should.
about it so much, you have given it far more significance than it actually has.
we should make merch that just has it on it. Just get like a screenshot of the review and put it on it, and just print that as a shirt. That would be awesome, man.
Just a white Hanes T-shirt with that's screen printed with that one.
I wonder if that person still listens to the show.
I sincerely doubt it.
I hope not. Truly,
from what I've discovered, most people who leave negative reviews, they don't follow up.
Really?
They're gone.
Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I've read some of the reviews that you've received, and I think one was about like your dad was angry one time, so they're like 1 star unsubscribed. And,
do you? Okay, so I'll tell you the story about this.
Daddy Ritter upset me. F this podcast.
So here's what happened. We gave a very negative review to a bourbon from a distillery, and they listened to it, and then they went and left a very negative review of the podcast on iTunes. And
what
then
a joke.
This is amazing. This is one of my favorite stories to tell about my time with the show. So about a month or two later, somebody sent me a screenshot from a whiskey group on Facebook where this company had commented on somebody's post about their product. And they were like, "We've received gold at competitions, and we are well renowned and everything." And the original poster commented back, and they were like, "I've had it, and I'm just not a fan." And this distillery just went off. They were like, "I can't believe that you would say that. You probably listened to that same podcast that we did with those two giggling fools where they said that they were getting flavor notes that aren't even on our flavor profile and yada, yada, yada." And like, I reached out to them and I was like, "Hey, I'm so sorry that you feel this way. Can we handle this like adults?" And for half of the conversation, they didn't. And then for the other half of the conversation, they wound up sending me free whiskey. So,
hey, wait, was it their whiskey?
Yes.
Oh no. Well, that's like clearly.
Did you ask if they would buy you some like wild turkey or?
Yeah, I know.
Can you please put this back? I don't want this one.
In the future, if you're sending us whiskey,
these.
we really like wild turkey at this podcast. So.
Anyway, so I have a box of whiskey that sits up in the closet that I haven't touched since the first time I got it.
You should put it behind like emergency glass or something. You know, like if the quarantine turns into the purge, it's like this is the only time we drink this whiskey. So,
but instead of using it to like drink from, I'm actually like glassing somebody with it. You know, it's a protective measure as opposed to a.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah, boy, that's so. But I mean, that's really the same sort of thing, right?
How bizarre is that, though? I mean,
well, but
they
like,
took it so personally that they would defame me in that way, and then we got into like a Twitter war over opinions.
It's the same idea. Like, I won't talk about the review anymore, but
well, no, it's
this guy like felt the need to bring up that Colin had a stammer.
It's a legitimate
but that's still insane, though. It's so stupid. That's not a legitimate criticism. It's not something that you like can have.
Well, but no, but what it is though, because okay, so if the point is that stammer detracts from the listenability of the podcast, and that's something that maybe they should consider, because that is something either I can edit out or something I can actively think about as I talk. That's a good thing. It's not, you didn't like our whiskey and, you know, your dad sucks as well. 1 star. Hashtag this is not my bourbon podcast. You know, it's I think that's a fundamentally different thing, you know, because it wasn't these guys don't agree with how I like Arrested Development. It was actually, I like a lot of what they say, but one of these guys has a stammer that makes it hard for me to listen. I'm so glad to receive that kind of criticism.
But I think ultimately, like, where the hate for me comes from, we'll part the kimono a little bit here and get deep in our relationship. When you and I first met, we did a play together. That's a thing. But you had a very bad stammer then.
Yeah, I still,
and like I would like go through, and I would try to help you come up with ways to fix that. That was like a way you and I bonded. It truly was. So that's what pissed me off about it more than anything.
Yeah. I know that. I know it's more of a almost, but in all seriousness, a protective, paternalistic thing, and I totally understand
absolutely,
that.
yeah.
And I totally and I think that's really quite sweet. But I just on the level of criticism, it doesn't bother me at all. So that's
well, I won't ever bring it up again. But I hope whoever that person is fucking dead. That's what I think.
You just brought it up again. That's you just did the thing you said you would. Like, this is the same principle. Like, if he just stopped talking about it, he wouldn't be that bad.
Okay, now I really won't anymore.
All right. Well, on that note, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up this ISO session.
Yeah, this has been a long time. I'm so sorry, Perry. I don't know how.
No. We don't all three get the chance to talk very often at the same time, and I mean, it really might have been since you guys were on the main episode back in June of 2018 that we really did get to talk. But all of this was sincerely just to catch up with you guys and make sure that you're doing okay. And, you know, it's been a very strange time for all of us. And I'm thankful for the both of you. And you all know how much I love you guys and how much I love the Hop Ons podcast, and always will. And look, even if you watch 24 next season, I will listen along to every single episode, lost, confused, but slightly enthusiastic about whatever it is that you have decided to bring into this world creatively.
So I did this thing at the end of the last episode that I want to be, John, I haven't even spoken to you about this, but I'm going to say it now. I wanted it to be a kind of Easter egg for where I hope we go moving forward. So clearly you didn't listen to the end of the last episode.
Me?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
John, yeah.
No, I didn't.
Did you listen all the way through, Perry, to the thing at the end?
I did. I will
Do
say,
you have any idea what I'm doing right now? Because it's
I had no idea what it was.
This is just a thing I do to amuse myself, where I create these narratives within our podcast where we're in a completely separate universe. Yeah, no, John,
which I love.
You just need to listen to the end of the
much.
last episode. So. Yeah.
Okay, I will definitely have to listen to it now to see what you're doing.
I had no idea.
Thanks for just springing this on me, too, Colin. I really appreciate it.
It's fine. Who cares?
Hey, you don't go and listen to every episode of the show that you're already on anyway.
I know, right? I should.
No, I don't know. You should.
Sometimes I get busy, Colin.
It's the most.
Listen, it's fine. It's fine.
It's the most self-gratifying thing in the entire world.
So, Perry, here's the thing I did. I sent John an email, and I said, I need you to record yourself saying these words, and then email that to me.
Yeah.
And yeah. So, okay. Well,
I just didn't know what it was supposed to be referencing, so.
Well, I'll send you a text later and let you
Okay,
know.
great.
I don't know. You may not. Yeah.
Perry, thank you for having us on.
Absolutely.
I truly appreciate it. I'm sorry that Colin is just the worst sometimes. No, I'm just kidding. I love him very much. I love him like a brother. Yeah, this was great. It was nice to catch up, man. We should do this more often.
Absolutely, yeah. And we've been talking forever about trying to get you guys in town too, so we can all hang out at some point and actually drink whiskey together instead of over Skype phone call. And we'll do that eventually. I've got to get this room converted into a nursery before I actually can consider.
Congratulations, man.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. Congratulations, Perry.
Thank you. We're really, really excited. I am losing this room. But it's okay because I'm gaining new life. And so
that's really nice.
Yeah.
No,
I'm tired. I've got a whole live stream I've got to do after this too. So
oh no. Okay.
I'm going to be exhausted. Hey, guys, once again, thank you all so much for being on. I love you guys so much. Where can people find you on social media, or where can they find the podcasts?
They can find the podcast everywhere except Spotify.
Yeah, we've addressed that.
We're on Twitter. We're on Twitter is it at the Hop-Ons Podcast?
It's something like that.
No, it's just
I
at
think it's
Hop-Ons.
Hop-Ons.
I don't know that. At Hop-Ons. My Twitter handle is at Marmot John. I also have at Podcast Arms is the Big Arms podcast Twitter handle, which I haven't tweeted in like 5 years, but I will eventually. I also have a YouTube channel called Nice Marmot Productions. I'll be putting a video up there on like Monday. So new video going up soon. Please like and subscribe. That'd be great. Colin, how about you, my dude?
I teach English and literature courses at Northeast State Community College. If you'd like to enroll, I'd love to have you. You'll have an opportunity to experience the kind of brutal, crushing incoherency that you heard in this podcast. But I'm also on Twitter at Colin Ashley Cox. So that's it. Yeah, don't tweet at me. I don't really tweet a lot from my own. I don't care. Don't. You can tweet to the podcast. Don't at me. I don't care. So
don't at me, bro.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Well, jeez. Of course, you guys go and check out the Hop-Ons podcast and Big Arms podcast and Cluttered Desk podcast as well. We didn't even talk about Cluttered Desk. But great content all around. Go check out Nice Marmot Productions, of course. Thank you all so much for listening to this week's Isosessions. You can follow the show at My Bourbon Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can leave us a very nice 5-star rate and review on iTunes, which I will read out on the main episodes. Please don't talk about how much I say the word in between words and sentences. Or do, now that I've brought it to everybody's attention, if you hadn't noticed already. And then last but not least, you can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/mybourbonpodcast for as little as $1 a month. You can keep the lights on for as little as $5 a month. You get bonus content like episodes and the pregame chats, which come out every week before each episode. So go and check all of that out. Colin and John, thank you guys again for being on the Isosessions. Great chatting with you guys. We'll have to do it again very soon. But until then, I'm Perry, and this is My Bourbon Podcast, Isosessions.